welcome back. The Shalom Club is interested in talking about some roots of resilience, and to do that, they've invited a very special guest who you also know and you've seen on our program before. I want to welcome Cindy Hashir and Annie McCary to the program.
Hi, thank you for having us.
Thank you for joining us.
Great
And Cindy, you're with the African American Heritage Club, but
Yes.
you are not representing the club quite so much today. You are going to be talking about one of Cindy's, as a guest speaker for Cindy. Cindy, tell us about this speaker, why we picked Annie, and what's going on.
Well, as it says, we are the Shalom Club, a multicultural gathering, and we've been having people come out and speak, different cultures coming out, and we thought that because we want to welcome everyone, that this would be a wonderful way of having my friend Annie speak about a memoir that she's writing. I'm very anxious because writing a book is very special, and Annie has done so many things, and to share her background is going to be great.
Now, Annie, the speech is called Roots of Resilience and the Jim Crow laws, growing up under those.
Yeah.
You know, I think some people, some kids, some younger generation think, oh, I learned about that in the history books. But we still have a whole generation of people who lived the experience of that.
Exactly. Yeah.
And tell folks who may be not 100% familiar with Jim Crow laws, what were some of those impediments that were put up in the South for people to basically keep them away from the polls?
Okay, so great. So the Jim Crow laws, the actual Jim Crow is kind of a derogatory name that was given to a black man many years ago. And so the Jim Crow laws are actually local and federal laws that were put in place to actually enforce segregation, separating blacks from whites.
Right, there were sundown towns, there were all sorts of neighborhoods you couldn't live in, the red-lined areas for real estate, all sorts of ordinances, and it also applied to voting as well, right?
Absolutely, and not just voting. It applied to separation in education,
schools, yeah, right.
social experiences.
Separate but equal was the law of the land for a long time.
For a long time, absolutely. And so growing up during that time is what I will be sharing, and what I've learned and how I gained some resilience from growing up during that time, living under those laws, not really understanding them, but being required to obey them. It created an incredible life experience for me.
Now, I'm not trying to draw any kind of equivalency here, so don't take that way. But for the Jewish people, there's also been, there's been separation, there's been segregation, there's been discrimination. So there's maybe a kindred spirit in this talk, right?
Basically, I mean, we can find definite patterns and different things that have happened in the past, but we'd like to bring in all different cultures to show that we all have some common ground, and then Annie's going to be bringing out something that is a very important part of history.
Now, Annie, can you share a little bit about maybe your own experience of having that lived experience with Jim Crow experience?
Absolutely. My whole growing up, and I grew up in Alabama in the South where these laws were enforced, and something as simple as segregation in schools, having to have separate schools, having separate restrooms, having separate places. There are certain places in my growing up that we were not allowed to go. And there were signs that, and back then we were identified as colored people. And so there would be signs that says colored people only. There would be signs that says whites only. So different areas, even laundromat experiences, cafeteria experiences in school, it was all part of my lived experience.
Yeah, it's an amazing, the fact that it still goes on. But just because the signs are gone, and just because the laws maybe are off the books, does it really mean we've got to the point where there's a true integration in the United States? I feel like that's there's still some unwritten rules and unwritten laws that are out there.
We're still working on it.
Absolutely, and that's part of the reason I'm honored to share my experiences, because if we don't learn, if we don't know, then there's always that possibility of history repeating itself. And so I just am honored to be able to share this experience with people.
Tell me a little bit about the Shalom Club in your overall, obviously multicultural, like you've said, but tell me a little bit more about why people should come, no matter what their faith or religion or background or race might be.
Well, I think it's interesting because we have all different groups of people joining us now. It's not just one particular group. And our plaque, which is outside of Clubhouse 1, shows we are welcoming. We want people to come with friends, make friends. I've seen people write down phone numbers for each other. And then just the fact that we want to have meaningful events, and having my friend Annie be there is just a pleasure. We're really excited to have her come and speak. So everyone who's interested in hearing her speak. I hope they'll come.
Yeah, and it's inherent in the name as well. Shalom is a welcoming in the first place.
Exactly. Hello, goodbye, peace. Exactly. And that's why we kept the name Shalom Club.
Annie, what has been your lived experience in California? Has it been a vastly different? I mean, this is supposed to be a more liberal state. We're supposed to be more open, and we're supposed to have this kind of a melting pot. The West Coast, kind of experience. Has it been a removal of that for you, or is there still kind of veiled things going on?
Well, I believe there's a veil of stuff still going on. I mean, all you have to do is turn on the news media and you can see crimes committed against people of color. And so me personally, I think my resilience has allowed me to just step up and be who I am. And whenever I see experiences like that, I can look at it from a wide angle view instead of the narrow angle view. So.
And Cindy, why is it important for us to share these stories and continue talking about these issues?
I think because we want to bridge the gap. We want people to feel that you can sit next to all different kinds of people and have a discussion and find that you can become their friend and learn more about their culture. So the more that we can share about each other's cultures, the more exciting life can be, and there'll be hopefully less problems. That's our goal.
Annie, do you think it's harder to hate when you get to know somebody? I mean, you can tell you this group, those people, kind of attitude. But when you meet somebody one on one, is it harder for people to really once they get to know somebody? It just feels like kind of all that stuff goes away.
Well, that's a very interesting question. And growing up, I never learned to hate. So I don't actually have the experience of hate. Mm-hmm. I see it in others, but and I credit my father for teaching me about the importance of not hating, the importance of love, the importance of forgiving. So I don't have that deep-seated seed of hatred. Mm-hmm. So for me, it's easier to love. I just don't have hate. So I don't know.
But growing up in the South, there had to be that feeling of, I know I'm not welcome here.
Absolutely.
So somebody hated me. And that can be an even more imposing feeling for somebody if somehow you feel secondary or not as good as for whatever unwritten rule that you don't understand.
Absolutely, and that's basically how I grew up, thinking and believing that not as good as. But what's interesting is I had two experiences going on at once. Society saying we're not as good as, know your place, and then I had a home environment that says there's something within you that is more powerful than anything outside of you. So I had these two dynamics going on at the same time. And so the one that won was the one that I fed the most, which was love. And so that's the one that the way I live my life, and that's how I taught my children.
Well, that sounds like a speech worth hearing. Its roots of resilience, growing up in Alabama under Jim Crow laws. Annie, thank you so much for sharing your story. Tell us a little bit more about when, where, how can people get tickets?
Okay, we have flyers out and we have tickets. Flyers are out and you can come. The doors open at 3 and we're starting at 3:30. We are also going to be at least about 45 minutes to an hour and then have a Q&A afterwards. And the other thing I did want to mention is that we had a speaker last month on Buddhism, and our trip to the temple there in Hacienda Heights will be the next event.
Oh,
so
okay.
Anybody who comes to hear Annie can also sign up for our bus trip to the temple.
Definitely a multicultural experience at the Shalom Club. Annie and Cindy, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
You're watching This Day. We'll be right back.